Hello, world.
Hey. Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
It's like I've forgotten how to say hello.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Life with Kaka. I'm your host and fellow producer, Carolina Groppa. This week on the show, I sit down with M.Elizabeth Hughes. Many of the guests you'll hear from, I've actually never met before we sit down to record. Others, however, like this week's guest, have been a part of my life professionally and personally for many years. In fact, Elizabeth and I have done 3 movies together, and we share a birthday, November 21st, if you're curious. She's produced a ton of films, a ton of series, and one of my favorite all-time movies, Short Term 12. Most recently, she produced the Amazon docuseries Lorena, which reframes the story of Lorena Bobbitt. If you have not checked it out, I highly, highly recommend it. Elizabeth gives us an unfiltered look into the challenges of spending almost a decade as a physical producer. It's an all-consuming part of the filmmaking process where you're working insane hours, you're not sleeping, you're not eating, you barely have time to recalibrate, and oftentimes, especially when there's a lack of awareness or appreciation for the immense energy it requires, it can leave your body and your soul depleted. I believe growth comes from checking in with ourselves. From constantly asking, does this still fulfill me? Does it still make me happy? And then being open to whatever the answer may be. So let's dive in. So many questions that I have for you. I guess the first is I really want to catch up the audience to who you are, where you've come from, how you got started in this business.
Okay. I'm M.Elizabeth Hughes. I was born in Georgia and decided when I was in college that I wanted to go to film school. So went to grad school at Chapman University, which is what brought me out to California, which is where I met, all the people I tend to work with these days.
Yeah, at Chapman.
Yeah. So I've been out here since 2006. And after I graduated, just stayed and started working, and I'm still working today. So that's good.
Great. And that's the end of the podcast.
That's it.
Thank you so much. Wait, so why Chapman? Like at that time there was AFI, USC. Why did you decide?
Chapman, because I did apply to USC and AFI and Chapman. And I also actually applied to 2 other schools that had nothing to do with film. And I was just kind of leaving it up to fate. I was like, what's going to happen here?
Yeah.
And Chapman was the only one I got into.
And how
And
do you feel like fate's working out for you so far?
I mean,
Now that you look back.
I have a definite misgivings about film school in general. And I think that's like another podcast.
Like you don't think it's
total.
worth the...
It's hard for me to say it's not worth it because it definitely was worth it for the relationships that I made. In terms of, did I learn how to be a film producer at film school? No.
Right.
Did I learn how to be on a major set? No. Like I did get quote unquote experience making short films on film.
Yeah.
But ultimately, like I didn't learn how to budget or schedule in film school.
Which is really weird. That's like
I
where
agree
it
with
starts.
you. And I agree with you. And maybe it's different now, but the 2 years I was there, that wasn't there. So the relationships that I have, I guess the most important one is my husband. I met him there. But also I have a lot of working relationships with people that I went to school there with, and even people I didn't go to school with that are alumni.
Yeah.
That I've worked with. Like the Chapman network is a real thing. So like I also just paid my student loan today. So you've caught me on a day where I'm like feeling sort of in the middle about it. I definitely wouldn't advise it today. People get, when they ask me, like, how do I feel about it? I'm always honest. The money you would spend on film school, just like intern for 2 years.
Right.
Like, because that's what it's going to cost to live for 2 years. So just like go get all that experience in the actual industry, not at film school.
I mean, do you feel like that's the advice if someone wants to sort of be more in the producing track or in general?
In general.
Yeah.
Like the screenwriters might have had a better experience than the directors and producers and cinematographers, because you're just, writing all the time and you're learning how to write and you're getting good feedback from amazing professors and your peers, which is not, so that's kind of not a waste of time because at least you have things at the end of it. But for us,
well, I think it's like a craft that, I don't know, you can sit alone in a room and write, but you can't produce alone in a vacuum. You can't really shoot something alone in a vacuum. You can't direct. What are you going to direct? Like objects?
Right.
So you have to have that collaboration and be like on your feet doing stuff. So maybe that's the difference, is that something that is sort of more alive and breathing and you're just kind of figuring it out as you go is harder to teach because you have to be in the trenches doing it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Totally agree. But that's what I did. I wouldn't have done it without film school. I lived in Georgia my entire life. So like I would not have moved to LA to try and be a film producer without that safety net.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing. Like, what was my option? That was my option when I was 22. When I graduated, I didn't want to go get a job at an agency, or I didn't want to go be an assistant.
Mm-hmm.
I just felt like, what am I doing if that's what I'm going to try and go do after film school? So I just started producing whatever I could, you know, like looking on Craigslist, looking on Mandy.com, like someone has a music video and they'll pay me $500 to produce it. I'll do that. You know? So I did a bunch of that. I did a feature film with Nate. Nate directed that and Benjamin shot it.
Benjamin's her husband.
Benjamin's my husband. And, you know, Beth Grant, Octavia Spencer, like they're in the movie. Like for that to be our first feature that we did like this summer out of film school, that was pretty
incredible.
Yeah. It was really cool. And, you know, Beth and I'm still very close to Beth and her daughter Mary, and Mary was in a little passion project we did last year, you know. And that relationship is, you know, 11 years old. Like that was one of the early relationships right out of film school, and I'm still working with them today. And I worked for Mattel for a couple of years doing animated Barbie movies, which was super fun. But ultimately I didn't see a future for myself at Mattel at the time. I thought like, because if I'd wanted to stay there forever, I could have just stayed there making Barbie movies forever.
Right.
But ultimately, I was like, I really just want to get back into the independent producing world. And I was given the opportunity to do that with someone actually contacted me via Facebook. They had seen the Herpes Boy trailer. Herpes Boy is a feature I was referencing earlier with Beth Grant. And they were impressed. And they reached out to me and said, I've written a feature. Can you produce it? And that was David Steinberg, and he wrote that. He wrote American Pie 2.
Nice.
More importantly, he and his wife just created a show that's on Netflix now called No Good Nick, which is really great.
Oh, nice. Check it out.
It is, it's fun. If you like, you know, it has Melissa Joan Hart and Sean Astin. So
okay. Okay. I think I saw.
Yeah. There's billboards.
Promo for
but so he reached out to me. That allowed me to leave Mattel to go do that, and then that just sort of. Then I had movie after movie after
catapulted you into that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you were doing this alone because like later on, a lot of people tend to get below the line agents, which rep line producers, but you were line producing at the time.
Yes. And when did I get an agent? Like a year ago? 2 years ago.
2 years ago. But it was basically you finding your own work and referrals, recommends, just word of mouth. This person's great. Hire this person.
And that's pretty typical, I think, with line producers.
Yeah.
Yeah. They come in pretty early on. Like, it's funny, like they did get me Lorena, but you know, usually I get my own stuff. So
So then how would you define a line producer and capital P producer?
Well, a line producer manages the budget and schedule, handles all the logistics, the hiring and firing, basically just managing the physical aspects of the shoot, which does involve like managing people as well. You know, you have to be aware of creative because you have to understand like why something is worth it or not. And I feel like whenever I'm, you know, making suggestions of what to cut because of financial reasons, I'm also thinking like, well, what could serve this creatively as well?
Right.
You know, what are my suggestions for this? So that people don't feel like I'm just constantly saying no and trying to like kill their darlings and everything.
Right.
You also have to be able to read a script and kind of know how much it's going to cost.
Is there a difference in your mind and from your experiences between line producing and being a UPM? Since I know in our world as indie producers, that tends to be a hybrid position. Yeah. Oftentimes.
I haven't really noticed. I mean, on most everything we've done, they haven't been separate positions or most, you know, I didn't have a UPM until very recently.
Right.
You know, so it was always me or I worked for a while with another line producer named Nate Kelly, and we would like split up stuff. But that we were doing, $1 million movies where we also didn't have accountants or production coordinator. So like Nate and I were basically doing 4 jobs that we were splitting into.
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful I don't have to do that again. I don't have to do the accounting ever again.
Especially for $1 million budgets. Those are rough.
Yeah.
They were rough back then and they're rougher now.
Yeah. I think it's almost impossible to make one now.
Yeah.
Like
for sure.
I can't imagine making one now because you can't make a union one. I know you have. I can't believe you have.
I did. It was rough.
Yeah. But like it wasn't $1 million though. It was a little over, right?
It was $1 million. I mean,
wow.
It was a tier 0, which doesn't exist. It's just like, as long as you pay people minimum wage, you can pay them whatever you want, which is like,
well, because you have to pay, but you have to pay their pension and health.
But you have to pay pension and health.
Yeah.
And it's not a good time because finding crew members who are going to come and work for, here's like $14 an hour for a department head when they're used to making minimum 27 at the lowest entry level is really hard.
Well, I feel really like the only people who would want to do that are people who are trying to get into the union. So you're trying to flip people in.
Well, it's relationships. It's trying to flip people in. And so, the movie that I did that I will not name, that was really hard. I mean, it was
pop up every now and then. I still haven't watched it.
It's fine.
Okay.
I mean, it's the kind of experience that I almost left this business altogether because it just really robbed me of myself so much and wasn't really worth the reward. Of course I grew a ton because that's the only thing you can take if you're smart is the lessons and the growth. But what it cost me was really hard to recover from. So I would not do another one again. But I do think it's an important sort of notch under someone's belt to go through an experience that hard. You see and understand all the elements that are at play. Then you start to value what a good accountant means.
Yep.
And why like I'll never ever again not have that be like whatever the rate that person needs to be to get the best person possible. Where your cuts get made. So you learn a lot of, for every concession you make as a line producer, all it means is you're going to be the person doing that job and picking up the slack because it still needs to get done.
Yeah, and I'm too old for that. It's interesting. I also had there were 2 experiences, 2 projects that almost killed me.
Yeah.
And
literally almost
killed me.
This is not like
almost left the industry after, both of those. And the first one that happened, after that, I was like, I didn't know what to do. I took 5 months off. I didn't know who I was anymore. I was like, this is not what I wanted to do. Yeah. And that was the first time that it ever happened in my career.
And this is because of just, I mean, obviously you don't want you to go into names.
Just a horrible experience.
Yeah. With like people treating you a certain way.
Yep. Everything. It was a very, very difficult movie for a lot of reasons. Mm-hmm. And I, on top of that, felt like I had no support. And
which is the worst.
Yeah. And it was, we were just talking about, your very long days, it was like 20-hour days all the time. There were times I didn't sleep and I would fall asleep in my clothes, wake up and go to set in the same clothes I had worn the day before. And everyone was so tired. I knew no one would notice that. Like, wow. I didn't care. And I knew no one else would care because they were probably doing the same thing,
Yeah.
So you can imagine that was a horrible situation. And it was out of town. I didn't have I wasn't sleeping in my own bed at night. I didn't have the support of my friends and husband, everything that you need to recharge yourself when you're working such long days with all these people. And I was like, I'm never going to work again. And then I got sent a script and I didn't want to read it. And I was just and then I read it and I was like, oh, I'm making this movie. And it was Short Term 12.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So pause the story there because I really want to talk about that. But in those 5 months where you almost left the business, what kept you going?
God, it's so long ago. So what was this? 2012, I think. I spent that 5 months trying to figure out what else I could do with my life. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I was like, okay, well, if it's not film producing, if it's not living in Los Angeles, what is it? What else? What do you even have the skills to do? Mm-hmm. What do you want to do? Where do you want to live? What is your exit plan if you're leaving the industry? Not the entire 5 months was soul searching. Part of it was just recovering, physically recovering. Yeah. I had a nervous breakdown. That was the first time that had ever happened. I was trying to just get my sanity back during mm-hmm. those 5 months and just chilling out. But also just doing a lot of soul searching and exploring like, what do I want to do? And it was that I was still in the middle of that when Short Term 12 came to me. Making that movie like cleansed me of all of it.
Yeah.
Because that was a great experience. That was the first time I felt like I was appreciated by producers above me, and everyone wanted to be there. It's a movie with a lot of kids in it. The hours were great. I feel like we had 10-hour days most of the time, which is insane when you just think about that movie. I felt like I could go home and go out to dinner. Like I felt like I still had a life when I was making that movie. And I was like, oh, it doesn't have to be a situation where I'm killing myself all the time. And it doesn't have to be a situation where I'm underappreciated. That just became a lesson for me of like, oh, choose your projects better, And thankfully I was in a financial place where I was allowed to do that because, why I had maybe taken jobs I shouldn't have taken up until that point was I needed the experience to build my resume, and I needed to make money.
Yeah.
And Short Term 12 really changed all of that for me. And it also I started getting a lot of more like people coming to me asking me to produce their stuff.
Well, what changed? I mean, what do you think, like, what was different about that project? Was it the people? Was it was the script? Like,
I mean, it's both, because the people were really good people. The producers were great. Destin, the director, is great. The entire crew had either worked with Destin before or worked with Nate and me before. There was loyalty. Everyone knew we were making something special. Yeah. And there was no expectation that anyone needed to kill themselves over it. Like, it was just a very welcoming, warm set. Yeah. And that I had not experienced before. So I think it was both of that. And, like, I didn't make a lot of money on that movie at all. That the budget was $500,000,
Insane.
So like, that's insane. When I think about that, I'm like, how did I do that?
How long did you guys shoot for?
20 days.
Like, you wouldn't even know how to make a movie for that much now.
Yeah. I mean, we had a very small crew.
Yeah.
Like, extremely small. Like, we had 2 people in G&E. We shot with 2 cameras. We only had 1 AC. Yeah. It was just a very small crew. Yeah. The place that we shot it at was like out in the middle of nowhere, so we got a really good deal. Like, we didn't have a location manager. Nate and I did that. Yeah. But like, we could do that because there weren't that many locations.
Right.
And it's hard because I wouldn't have known. You don't know until you're in it.
Right.
If the people are good or bad.
I know.
Really. And you just have to either take a risk or trust your gut or whatever it is. And I have tried to listen to that more. I have not been successful all the time. There are definitely times, I can definitely speak to other projects after 2012 where I did not have a good experience. I'm just trying to be better about listening to myself and like, if there's a red flag at the beginning, that red flag's not going away.
Right. Well, and I think there's that thing of pride that we all have is we take on a project. Like, you may find out, however much into prep or in the beginning of the shoot, like, oh, this is not good people. This is going to suck. But you're not going to walk away from it. It's like really rare to do that. You just kind of have to stick it out and write it out. There's just this like sense of responsibility to finish the thing that you started, even if it kills me.
Yeah. Which is funny because like that doesn't apply to everyone on the crew.
No.
We've seen people, quit 4 days in, because they're just going to go on to whatever's better or something else. And that's 100% not what a line producer's job is. And if you do that, you're probably not going to get hired a lot.
Exactly.
Like, if you prep a show and then you quit.
Well, and also if you're the line producer getting a call for a job that's like in production because that line producer quit, it's like, what am I stepping into?
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, 2012, Short Term 12, which for the listeners is one of my favorite movies. One of the movies that changed the game for me, and why I met Elizabeth was because I found out she was speaking at a panel, and I was like, this is my favorite movie. I love everything about this movie. I need to know how this was made. I want to learn about the people who made this. And we met at this panel, and this is a story for another day, but then we started working together. But hearing you talk about that, the fact that the movie had that, what I think is that special lightning in a bottle experience that sometimes gets created on set, I believe that gets imprinted on the screen. And to me, like, you feel that when you watch a movie, especially something that is that low budget, where it's like, it's just people getting together and telling a story.
Yeah.
And that really translates. I think it gets imprinted onto the screen in a way that's really special and palpable. And that to me is one of the many reasons why that movie did what it did when it came out and stood out and honestly still holds up. Like I read the script every once in a while and rewatch it every once in a while. And I still am so moved by it.
It's such a good script too.
A lot of incredible actors.
Yeah,
in that movie.
It's kind of nuts.
In their infancy, you know, you got Rami Malek, who just won an Academy Award, like insane. Obviously, Brie Larson goes without saying, and
Lakeith Stanfield.
Lakeith Stanfield.
He's
oh my God,
amazing.
He's incredible.
Yeah.
Every part of it that could be touched and could be amplified in all the best ways it was.
I completely agree.
And so, you know, I'm just like fangirling, but it's
I
true.
agree.
It's true.
I remember when I saw it for the first time with the music, like I saw it finished, like colored with the music and everything. I cried.
Of course.
Because you just, that last scene where, you know, they're running across the lawn and like the music swells and you're just like, you know, that was such a great like cap to that. And then, you know, we got into South by Southwest and I had been a part of movies before that I'd gotten into major film festivals. And that had gone a certain way that was kind of disappointing. When Short Term 12 got into South by Southwest, like the producers took care of us. They got like an Airbnb for a bunch of us. And, you know, there was a party. Like it was like, yes, let's celebrate. We made a movie that got into South by.
We the collective, not I the director.
Yes, not I the director, not I the producer. We made this together. That continued like after set is what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
So it was a good experience from start to finish.
I think that's incredible. It's interesting if had that project not fallen into your world at that time, who knows if you would have even been producing.
That's true. Yeah.
Like it was exactly what you needed to restore your faith in humanity. Yeah. And in this, the reason why I think you got into this in the first place, which is to be a part of telling stories that matter and have impact. But it's hard to maintain that sense of like connection to the source of why you do this, especially like when you're working that 17-hour day and you really want to walk away from it all. It's got to be worth it. You know, I think you said this to me once. You were like, I got to care about it enough at midnight on a Tuesday.
Yeah. The mistakes I've made the past couple of years have been choosing projects that I didn't care about enough. And for whatever reason, because of who was producing it or the money or whatever. When I look back at the experiences that were bad, it's more like, oh, you just really didn't care either. Yeah. And that's such a horrible thing for me because I have to care about what I'm working on. Yeah. Because if I'm not, then I might as well go work like a 9 to 5. You know, I'm definitely a quote unquote live to work person. Mm-hmm. And I think if you're a producer, that's what you are. You can't be the other type. No. You have to care. And if you don't, you probably shouldn't be doing this. Yeah.
So Short Term 12, and that opens up all these incredible doors. Mm-hmm. And what kind of things did you do after that? I
did a couple of movies for Netflix that were very fun to do. One with Bob Odenkirk and one with Jared Stern that you both worked on. So,
I also worked on. Yes. You said you both. I'm like, who's the other person?
I meant that.
I know. Yeah. Yes. I just heard it wrong. Yes, that was actually the first feature I got to be a part of from the very beginning of like the narrative feature from the beginning of like prep. That was really special and I learned a lot, and it was really, I remember stepping into it like being like, whoa, I had no idea. And I had been producing, but I had been doing commercials. I had done a doc. I had done some shorts, you know, play, but it's a completely different beast when you step into the feature world. And that was a really great experience for me, especially because fun fact, I had been Bob's nanny many years prior. So to have this sort of like full circle feeling of like, wow, I sat on his couch and hung out with him and he taught me how to cook tilapia and make dinner for the kids. And here I am getting to be a part of the production that's supporting one of the first Netflix original movies.
It was one of the first ones. And Bob had that script for 10 years. Like he'd been trying to get Girlfriend's Day made for 10 years. And I had been attached to Girlfriend's Day, I think for 5 by the time we shot it. Like a long time. Like, and then, Netflix wanted to do it and we did it. And then right after that, we did another Netflix movie with a different writer-director, which is very fun, very cute, romantic
Happy
comedy.
Anniversary.
Yep. Besides the fact that I produced both of those, my dad is also in both of those. Yes. And I just want to make that
There's a cameo, so please watch. And when you find Elizabeth's dad, please hit me up with screenshots of her father.
He did so well in Girlfriend's Day that we gave him a bigger role in Happy Anniversary. And He was, yeah. And then, so his whole thing is like, he wants to be in everything from now on, which is fair.
But he's not an actor. He's a pastor.
Yes. That's true. He is a pastor. He has acted before.
Yeah.
In fact,
he's a natural. Don't get me wrong.
No, he's
for
got
the
some
listeners.
talent.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was in my senior thesis play that I wrote. So.
Well, he couldn't have been in Lorena, huh?
Not really.
In the reenactments,
I mean, he could have. We
like
talked about it. We talked about it, and I was like, Dad, like, no one will know it's you.
Yeah.
You know,
because
it's
he
just
was like,
impressions.
I don't care.
No, I was like, I was like, I don't have money to fly you out, so you can't be in Lorena unless you do it. And then he definitely didn't want to be in Tour de Pharmacy, so that's fair.
That's definitely not his vibe.
We'll see about the next one, but
okay. So that Tour de Farm, Happy Anniversary, Miss Virginia, and then Lorena.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Lorena came. I was in one of my I had taken 3 months off, sort of thing. Like, didn't really know if I wanted to do this anymore because Girlfriend's Day and Happy Anniversary were good experiences. Tour de Pharmacy was not.
And you had just come off of that.
And I just come off of that. And Tour de Pharmacy was the project that like would not die, in the sense that we basically shot once a month for a year. You know, when Kevin Bacon's available, we shot Kevin Bacon on Labor Day because that's when he was available. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it was just something that like I had to do for a year. And then like there was a month when we were finishing it, like we had an air date, which was like July 8th or something. We were like scrambling to finish it. Like I know we delivered that master like 2 days before air.
Wow.
You know, Benjamin was the colorist and he did all the visual effects with his company. So like June of that year, June of 2017, he and I worked 7 days a week on Tour de Pharmacy, just like scrambling to finish it, you know, and it was not a rewarding experience. It was not financially rewarding. It was not professionally rewarding. It was difficult. It was difficult for a lot of different reasons. You know, when you're married to someone that you're working with and you're working with them that much, it just became like, we would go to dinner and I'd be like, we can't talk about it. I can't talk about Tour de Pharmacy anymore.
Yeah.
Like, and so that was very difficult. And I was like, sort of in, that, like, what am I going to do? And then UTA wanted to sign me. And I was like, okay, fine. Like, let's see what UTA can do. And UTA brought me Lorena, which was, it's a docuseries, executive produced by Jordan Peele. And that's all they knew at the time when they said, we're going to send you in for this interview. They didn't know it was about Lorena Bobbitt. Like, no one even knew that. They were telling everyone it's a documentary about the 24-hour news cycle, but it's executive produced by Jordan Peele. And I was like, okay, well, this is interesting. And then I go to the interview. They tell me it's about Lorena Bobbitt. It's reframing the story from her perspective because, 25 years ago, it was not her perspective at all. I'm hearing Josh the director, and Steven, the producer, talk about it with such passion. And like, they clearly want to get this right because we as a society got it wrong 25 years ago. And I was like, a documentary, huh? Like, I've never really done that before. Like, I had worked on a documentary before, but not, nothing this big, nothing this well-funded, I guess. Yeah. And I was like, oh yeah, this sounds like something I want to do. So I took that job, worked on it, from like October 2017 till basically a month ago. So it was the longest job I've ever had. That wasn't Mattel. Yeah. That took some adjusting at some points because I'm used to like doing a narrative feature that's like 3 months out of your life, like prep for a month, shoot for a month, post for a month, Yeah. And this was like, oh no, you're working on this like for over a year, and also doing things I'd never done before, like learning how to clear archival. Like that's not a thing you do in narrative. No. And having such a lengthy post period and having post at the same time as production, I definitely learned a lot. Yeah. And I'm also very proud of it. I think it's really good. That sort of brought me out of that thing of like, oh, okay, it's not producing you don't like, it's the last project you did. Right. And like just learn from this, learn to make better decisions. And
well, you forgot to mention in that year that you were doing Lorena, you also just stepped off momentarily to go produce another feature.
I
that
did.
Was like 3-4 months of your life,
right,
of prep and shoot, and then post has been ongoing until now. But
it's done.
It's done.
It's
now.
finally done. Yeah,
but it was very
long,
very long and intense.
Yeah,
for you.
Longer than normal post period for an independent narrative.
So what is it that you look for then in something? Like if you had to say, hey, these are the things I need for it to be a good experience, what are those things?
Just respect among.
You're asking for too much.
I mean, I don't even mean like respect for me. I mean, everyone having respect for each other, like having a good work environment. A lot of that like just has to come from the top down. And there were things on that movie that we couldn't avoid, and that's how they were. And it was also a hard movie. We had a lot of locations. We had a huge cast.
DC for a week.
Yeah. Oh my God. We went to DC for a week. I did not forget that we went to DC for a week. I will never forget. I like don't need to set foot in that city for a long time. Just FYI. It was just more like I wasn't excited to go to work every day.
Yeah.
And I could tell that a lot of other people weren't excited to go to work every day. And I feel like, you know, you and I and Stacy and Bobby and other people like did our best to try and make it a place that people were excited to go to work every day.
Yeah.
But ultimately, sometimes that just doesn't happen.
Well, it's,
you know,
if there's a systemic issue, like you
Yeah.
can't, there's only so much you can do. It's almost like when there's a virus,
Yeah.
you can only contain it because once it's there,
Yeah.
you can't kill it. You can try, but then that's just the world you're in. And it's about, okay, how do we keep this shit from not spreading?
Yeah.
That responsibility of just, we got to get to the finish line. We just got to see this through,
Right.
even if it kills you.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing you can do is just not work with those people again.
Yeah.
I feel like we've had this conversation before. I can't make someone care.
Right. You
You
can't
know?
make someone be a better human.
Yeah. Like I can't make someone care about their job, other people. So ultimately, you just don't work with those people again.
Yeah.
You know, and like that's besides the fact that Lorena is good and I'm proud of it, you know, that everyone there really cared about what they were doing.
Yeah.
You know, you feed off that energy. You know, like if people at the top care about what they're doing, you know, everyone's going to respond with that sort of energy.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I guess realizing it's kind of rare, at least in this low budget indie world, I think it's rare.
Same. I can't speak for studio movies.
Yeah.
Like,
Who knows?
who knows?
Or TV shows.
What do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about producers?
Like line producers or producers?
All of it.
All of it. That they don't do anything, which is just not true. I mean, it's probably true in some cases. You know, of course there are people who don't do anything. But, you know, a real working producer does a lot, and they're there from the beginning of a project and they're shepherding it through. And just because, you know, they're sitting at Video Village doesn't mean they didn't put in the work leading up to that. It doesn't mean that they aren't answering emails all day about, you know, cast issues or whatever, like trying to problem solve for the future days. Like that is a misconception that really annoys me, that like, oh, we just sit around and don't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
A misconception about line producers is that they're just always going to tell you no, and that you shouldn't be honest with them about what you want because they're just going to tell you no, and you should ask for more than what you think you're going to get because they're going to lowball you or undercut you. That, you know, I'm like a very transparent person. I don't try to, like, whatever I have in for your budget, I'm going to tell you what it is. Like, I'm not going to wheel and deal you over this thing because I ultimately want the same thing you want, which is the best possible version of this movie. I don't get anything by saving like $2,000 out of the wardrobe budget, you know, that they could have used.
Go in your
like
pocket.
I don't get anything out of that. So why wouldn't I want it to make the best possible thing? When you're working with people for the first time or department heads for the first time, they always think you're like that kind of line producer that's like lying to them and saying we don't have the money when in reality you do. So those two things, that's what I would say.
Those two things.
Yeah.
I forget what question I asked you the last time we spoke, where you were like, there are two things I hate about LA, and we got on this.
Oh man, I wish I remembered.
Oh yeah, I remember it super well. We were sort of talking on the frustrating realities of how your worth is so only as good as the thing you just finished.
Oh yeah.
And that no matter what you just finished, it's like there's the perception that, well, you need to be doing more. Well, you're not doing enough. Well, you're only working on one thing.
Yeah.
Lorena just premiered. You don't have your next job. Like, what is wrong with you?
Oh, and I've definitely gotten that.
Yeah.
The past couple of months.
So that's let's talk about that.
Yeah. It's extremely frustrating. Because I think I had just read that millennial burnout article, or
No,
no,
it was before that.
that was after. Okay,
This was like
then
in August of last year.
Okay, I didn't have a name for millennial burnout at the time, but I definitely was feeling it.
Yeah,
that's like a daily struggle for me to psych myself out of that, because that is so ingrained, I think, in our generation, and especially in Los Angeles. Just like, you should constantly be hustling. What are you trying to do? Oh, you're working on something. Well, aren't you trying to line up the next thing? And are you writing on the weekends while you're doing this other thing? And it's just like, can I live my life?
Yeah.
Can I go out to eat or without feeling like I need to be doing a side project?
Yeah.
And that was definitely something I experienced a lot, and that article really helped crystallize it.
Yeah.
And put a name to it so that I can be aware of it.
Why do you think that is such a concern for people here? Because that is such a, I can't speak for other markets.
Yeah.
I often wonder, are the people who ask me that question asking me that because they don't have anything going on, or are they that busy? What drives that?
I don't know. And like, I think we talked about the fact that I'll sometimes avoid going to parties because I just want to avoid that question.
Yeah.
We have literally not gone to some parties before because I was like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about what I'm working on. Not because I'm not proud of it, or not because, I don't like it.
Because there's more to you than what you're working on.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like it's like akin to asking how's the weather. Like, people just
they don't know what
so
else to
uncomfortable
say. And it's like that. And how was the traffic getting here? Like they're just like,
terrible.
What roads did you take to get here? They do feel sort of automatic.
Yeah.
In that sense. And
Yeah.
But because of that, then you feel like I have to have an answer, and I have to have an answer that is good, or even just that I'm comfortable with.
Right.
Because I've definitely been unemployed sometimes when that question has happened, and people have a lot of questions about that. Like, why are you unemployed?
What happened?
What happened? Why aren't you working? Because the idea is that like you should constantly be working, right, and trying to do.
And if
something.
you don't, then something is wrong with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, God forbid you actually just want a break.
When Girlfriend's Day happened, which we shot, right before Christmas, and then we took Christmas off, and then we came back and finished in January because of Bob's, Better Call Saul schedule. Not because I'm bad at my job. That's just how we had to do it. Before Girlfriend's Day happened, Benjamin and I had a trip to Italy planned, like tickets bought, hotel, like all of that. And that had been planned for a long time. And then that's when Girlfriend's Day was going to shoot. And I just got a month before we were going to go, I got really antsy about being gone over the Christmas break, because I thought I was the only one who could handle things. I was like, if I'm out of the country and something happens, I don't know that it's going to get taken care of. And I just realized, even if that's not true, that I would not be able to enjoy my vacation. I was just not mentally there. So we canceled it. And then last year we went to Hong Kong. And this is like, that was the first time I'd been out of the country, I mean, I've been to Mexico, but come on.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? The first place that like really, like, it's a real travel vacation.
Yeah.
I love that city. I want to go back. But what was so great about it is that at that point, I was working on Lorena. I definitely was in a mental space where I could be like, it's all going to be okay. You're going to handle it. You know what I mean? Like, it's going to be fine. I don't have to worry about it. That's one of the reasons why it was so great, because I was actually able to enjoy it.
Right.
And I feel like that is, I'm just trying to take that feeling with me,
Yeah.
And like another good Girlfriend's Day vacation story is we were done shooting in January, and then we were in post, and Benjamin and I went to Georgia for a month in April. I had to have like 2-hour conference calls, like several days. Like one day we were on a hike, and I had to get on a call with like Mark and Bob. And my mom still references that. Every time I'm visiting her, she's out here, she's like, are you going to have to do that while you're visiting? And like, obviously I didn't want to do that while I was on vacation, but I didn't know how to handle that in a better way, or know how to say, I'm available this day, but I'm not available these other days. I think I've gotten better at that.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It's hard. It's like that sense of responsibility.
Yeah.
You think that you're the only person, and if anything goes wrong or implodes, it's on you.
Yeah.
But I think another part of that is learning to be a better delegator and having people who work in your team that you can trust, so that if you are going to step away, or if you need someone else to be on a call and take notes for you, like you can trust that it's going to be handled the way that you would, you know, and that's going to, I think that that's a part of it as well. And that only comes with maturity of like knowing what you're doing so well and having the sort of confidence that you've done versions of this project so many times that the probability statistically of it going wrong is not likely.
I know.
Right. But like we still psych ourselves out.
Part of your job as a line producer, like as a producer in general, is like, you do need to think about the worst case scenario.
Of course.
Like, what are you going to do if this happens? What are you going to do if, like, you know, your actor that you only have for one day gets sick? Like, what are you going to do if it rains on the day you're shooting on the golf course? You know, like,
you can plan for it, you know, this as much as you want, but when it actually happens, there's not much you can do.
Yeah.
There's like decisions you can make on the day or we're leading up to it to pivot, but you can't kill yourself by trying to resolve all the issues that don't exist yet, because then I think you are not resting. You're not taking care of yourself to actually rise up to the occasion when these challenges do come up and you have to, you know, deal with them in real time. So there's that. But, you know, how in these moments of lulls in your career where you haven't worked and you have been unemployed, and especially because you freelanced for so long, like what keeps you sane? Like, how do you stay together mentally, emotionally to keep going?
I create other things that are my job. So, for example, going to the gym is part of my job. Going to like working on a cross stitch project. Like I'll make goals for the month, things like that. So it's not like, otherwise I'll just spend, you know, the whole day playing World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
So I create other things that keep me sane, but that are ultimately for me and not work related. And every time I'm not working is because I'm choosing not to work. Specifically in this gap between Lorena and the next thing, my goal has been get healthier. I have done that. So
yeah, and
I'm very happy about it.
I love it. How do you feel like you've grown or evolved as a producer, like now looking back, just I guess to maybe short term 12?
I'm definitely getting better. Like, you know, every project I'm learning something new. I'm trying to take projects where there's a new skill involved, or like either it's more money, so it's like a bigger crew or more shoot days, or it's something like Lorena where suddenly I'm having to do something I've never done before. Different projects, you know, my resume like doesn't really make any sense in terms of all the different types of things I've worked on.
Right.
And I take pride in that because I'll only want to work on comedy. I don't only want to work on drama. Where I'm at is like, I don't want to do the same thing all the time. Like, you know, again, I did really enjoy Happy Anniversary, but I don't want to make Happy Anniversary 2, you know?
Right. So then how do you evolve in that way? Is it saying no to certain things? Like, what is the strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely said no to things that I've felt like, well, I've made this movie before. I've also said no to things where I'm like, well, I've seen this movie before, you know? Like the things that have really excited me the past couple of years have been things that I haven't seen before. And I'm talking about movies that, scripts that came to me that I didn't end up doing for scheduling purposes or whatever. Like when I read the script for 8th grade, which was at the time called Coolest Girl in the World, which I think is a great title. I was like, I've never seen this movie before. This is something I want to do. Most recently, a friend of ours, Brian DeGuire, wrote a script.
Yeah.
I read it and was like, oh, I've never seen this movie before.
Cool.
Like like this is something I want to be a part of. You know,
cool.
It's usually stuff like that where it excites me in a way that like, I don't know how it's going to turn out. I'm sure when they were making Get Out, they were like, we can't point to anything like this.
Yeah. Doesn't exist.
We're making this is new, you know? And there's something exciting about that.
Yeah. Well, we're getting close to the end.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone who not just wants to get in this business, because I think that's too vague. I think specifically wants to be a producer with a varied resume, like you have been able to achieve.
I would say that it's hard. Like that would be the first.
Like, don't do it.
I mean, that would be the
That's
first. Like
yeah.
I would, again, I would be very transparent about it and say that it was hard, and there were years where I had to work on projects I didn't care about because I just needed the money and I needed to build my experience. And some of those projects were very, very difficult, and they were 7 days a week. Like I was working on it every day. It wasn't like a normal job.
Yeah.
So I would say that if any of that scares you, then you shouldn't do it, because that's definitely how it's going to be for a while. And I think even when you're working on big studio stuff, it's like that sometimes.
Yeah.
It's definitely taking over your life.
Mm-hmm.
Are you comfortable with that? Like, and I would also say, like, what do you actually want out of your lifestyle? Like, do you want kids? Do you want to be able to hang out with them on the weekends? Do you want to be able to go to their recitals? Because that might not be possible.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to miss out on some stuff because you have to be present for the movie first. And, there are a lot of people who, were career line producers and now work at like studios because they want to spend more time with their kids, like because they know that lifestyle isn't conducive to that sort of life. So that's another thing I would ask, like, think about what you want your life to be. Yeah. It's not something I would recommend. I got to be honest. Do you want to cut that out? You don't want
No,
that?
I want the honesty. I want the truth. Are you kidding me?
I mean, it's, a good line producer is hard to find. And I think that you're coming into a situation where you don't have a good rep in the first place. Like nobody really likes a line producer because you're always saying no. So you have to be aware of that. And then you have to realize that your job is super hard. And not only do you have to be good at budgeting and scheduling, which is a skill, that not everyone is good with, that you also have to be good at managing a bunch of different personalities.
Yeah.
And that's also a skill that not everyone has.
Right.
And those are two very different things that have to be in one person. And what I have found sometimes is that, some line producers are better at one than the other. You just have to work on perfecting both of those things. I don't like networking. I don't like any of that stuff, but I know what I got myself into.
Right.
I know that that's part of the job. Like I can not like it and still recognize that it's part of my job.
Right.
And that it's something that I need to be good at. That's something I realized a long time ago. I would just think about all those things.
Yeah.
If that's what you want to do.
So if you could go back knowing what you know now, like, do you think you would have done something differently when, let's just pretend like you still would have come out here or you still would have met Benjamin no matter where you ended up, right? Like that's not the point of contention. But
yeah,
if a future Elizabeth told 22-year-old Elizabeth, like, hey, you're probably going to feel this way 12 years later, would you still do it?
No.
What would you have done then?
I don't know, but I was 22, so I definitely had time to figure it out.
Yeah, for sure.
And that it was a decision that I made at 22 that at 35 I'm managing to live with. I have done projects that I like, and I do day to day like my job. I don't want to give the impression that I don't like doing what I do, because I do, but it's hard. And there are times where I'm like, why didn't I do something that afforded more stability?
Right.
Like why did I do something where I was going to wonder sometimes where the next paycheck was coming from? And because that's just added stress to all the other stress, that I created for myself.
Well, and the reality is I always wanted to believe that it somehow gets easier, and it doesn't. Like
I think aspects of it get easier.
Sure, like you get faster, you get better.
Yeah.
Like maybe things don't take as long because you can schedule and budget better, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what I would do. And that's, like I said, every time I've had those couple of months where I'm like, I'm going to leave, I'm going to do something else.
Yeah.
I've never figured out what that thing is. So I don't know what it is. And it's more like, well, what would I take a lot of pride in how I do my job and that I'm good at it. And like when I figure out something, when I solve a problem, that is a big thing for me. That gives me pride. I don't know what job is out there where I would get that same sort of satisfaction. I wouldn't, it's not something I would suggest to someone. Like, if you can do anything else, you should do that thing, you know? And I've always said that. If I could do anything else, I would do that thing. But I don't know what that thing is.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And I also really like Los Angeles. So, you know, if you're going to live here, you might as well be in the industry.
Yeah. Okay. I like it. It's very honest. It's very authentic. And look, that's the point of this, you know, is my goal is that if someone is 22 years old and listening and thinking about it, and because they have a perception of what we do that is, you know, red carpets with celebrities and movie premieres and film festivals and that, which does happen.
Sure.
But it's a very small percentage of what we do.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's sometimes the only part that is visible.
Right.
So I would hope that that person listening would use this as really important insider information to make that decision for themselves, you know, if that's really the path they want to take.
Yeah. Have any of your other producers has everyone been super positive about their job?
No,
okay,
no.
good.
I think a lot of people I've spoken to, especially people who freelance, there's this general sense of like, if I could do something else, I'd be doing it.
Yeah.
It's hard. And like you said, the people who do have goals for themselves, they want a balance, or they want a normal like 9 to 5, or they want more time with their families, or to have children, or a relationship. Like, you start to get older and your priorities start to change.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah. And that's, you know,
you can't make that decision or have that visibility for yourself at 22.
Yeah. This sort of feeling is, I would say, you know, like relatively new for me. You know, I thought I did want to be in narrative, like scripted forever. Like, and I just wanted to keep doing that. And then realizing, oh no, like I don't want to do that. That's very new. And like 25-year-old me would have been like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Like, you dreamed about something like Happy Anniversary. Like, why is this not like good enough for you? Because I didn't know any better at 25.
Well, I think it's like you said, at 25, it was good enough.
Yeah.
And now it isn't, because thankfully you grow and you evolve and you start to want different things out of your life and out of your professional fulfillments. And if that isn't growing, I think that that's something to also look at. You know, if you're just content being where you are all the time, like, I don't know, I'm not wired that way. So for me, that's hard to like identify with. Like, I'm just constantly on the quest for new experiences and new things, which is why I was personally drawn into this business. The more I start to feel like I'm laterally moving around, it's not new. It's kind of like,
it's not satisfying.
Yeah, it's a different shade of the same color.
Yeah.
It's like cool, but it's still blue. Like, I want red. You know, I want to try red. So you have to advocate for yourself and try new things. But, and the other part of it is like, I look at people 10, 15, 20 years my senior who may be down a path that I think I want to be in. Are they happy? What are they doing? What is their life like? What do they have? You know, do they have a balance, or are they, perhaps they're so happy that their whole life and their whole identity is tied to their profession? But I don't know. I think there's more. There's got to be more. And so it's part of why I wanted to do this, to talk to these interesting people and share these stories that hopefully give more insight and, I don't know, help us all in some way, you know, even if it's just a community of other producers who feel the same way or who struggle with the same things. Like, so we're not that alone in this journey, even if you're only here for the next 2 years and then you decide to leave because you find the next thing you want to do. So
I think I'm staying now. We'll see.
Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah.
Well, maybe there'll be a part 2.
Yes.
When you leave.
When I
your
leave.
Departure.
That's great. I always have an exit strategy.
Yeah. I love it. Well, thank you for being on the show. This is so lovely. Thank you so much for doing this life thing with me. I'm so grateful you're here. You keep tuning in week after week. Elizabeth dug into some really deep places, and not many people are willing to go there, especially not on a microphone. But this is exactly what the show is about, and so I'm very grateful to her for her honesty. I'd love to know your thoughts on this conversation and what some of your takeaways were. If you're enjoying the show, please subscribe, like, rate, review, all the things. I'm at Carolina Groppa. The show's at Life with Kaka. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Beijos.